Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. For our second episode covering Black Mirror's USS Callister Into Infinity, we welcome cinematographer Stephan Person. Stephan will talk us through coming back for the sequel and the creative decisions made for the look of the show. Please be warned there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Stephan. Hi, Stefan. Thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Robert. Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too, and I'm really glad that we can sit down and discuss Black Mirror episode USS Callister Into Infinity, which recently has come out on Netflix.
Mhm.
How have you found the reception to the episode, considering it's kind of the first official sequel episode in the history of Black Mirror, even though we do get a bit of like Easter eggs peppered in into different episodes?
No, exactly. It's yeah, that does happen a lot. Charlie can't help himself. He always has to put little references and things from previous episodes. But yeah, this was the first proper sequel. I thought it went down remarkably well. I was quite pleased. We were really worried. When we were making it, I sort of thought like this. The one thing you don't want is alienating the fans who loved the first one. You want to make something that they hopefully will enjoy and that expands their experience. And it is, I mean, so far, what I sort of the small glimpses I looked at the internet and reviews and stuff, it seems like we got away with it at least, But and some people, are very excited about it, So I was thrilled with the reception.
In a way, I was this you kind of might have answered one of my questions. I'm not sure, but
Sure, no, sure.
um, were you ever worried about going back to a sort of story that you've not, I wouldn't say story, but going back to that world again? Because you've worked on
Hmm.
other episodes of Black Mirror, but going back to sort of previous work, did you ever feel like there might be a bit more pressure to sort of, I don't want to say perform because it makes it sound like a sports game,
Hmm.
but as in, were you worried there was a pressure of like you don't want to do the same visual style again, but you want to do, but like how can you then change it
Yeah,
up?
I wasn't too worried about the visual style. I sort of the visual style I was quite pleased with how the first one turned out, and all I wanted for that was a continuation and maybe a elaboration, something that sort of pushed the story along and felt like it was in the same universe, but maybe you got to see around the corner and peek into different parts of this universe. So that wasn't the worry. The worry for me was more about the story that if we were going to get do a good enough job, that we not going to be boring people or do something that is, or repeat ourselves or do something that's been seen before or something, So that was the real issue was just making sure that we were living up to the legacy of the first episode. Again, I don't know if we 100% did that, but I think we certainly tried our best to do a good job with it.
At some point, I can imagine that there is hesitation to go back because
Mm,
how much can you tell visually, and then also in the story point of view, how do you push the story along? Um,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
I, I can imagine as well that it
But
could
it
be.
actually was sort of the opposite for us.
Oh, sorry, say that again.
No, but just we were the funny thing was that we were sort of we were all very excited to go back. Actually, at least that we may there might be yeah, initially it might be a series, and then it was going to be 6-part series, then it was a 4-part series, and it was a 3-part series. But there was all these kind of ideas floating around that we were going to expand the universe and we were going to make this exciting new series show. We were thrilled about it, we couldn't wait to go back, But then suddenly, when you are in the room and you actually have to do it, the idea of it, is exciting. But when you have to the pressure of then actually delivering, that's a totally different thing.
Hmm. Well, yeah, again,
And looked at the script.
especially when you have something like if you did, when they did have that sort of conversations of potentially doing a whole series about it, um, God, that'd be quite exciting in a way, to have like a whole.
Yeah, no, I would have loved that.
But then also it could have been quite kind of like jarring because how do you push it along? And then at a story point of view, how does it not then become like a parody of
Mm,
itself? And then do you take it seriously? There's so many tones that you could probably play with.
mm.
Um, but then
Oh yeah.
I'm glad that I wouldn't have that problem to sort of figure that out. Um,
No, sure, 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 sure.
so that kind of works in that favor. When it comes to going back to a visual style that you've used before, how do you go about
Mm.
thinking up of new ways of how do you go about thinking of to create a new way of presenting the story and also adding a new spin of it, especially now when you get introduced to different worlds, and how do you want to sort of present those visually as well?
Yeah, how did we do it? I mean, I think we just wanted to do something slightly different. We did a desert planet, Red Desert Planet in the first episode or the original, from 2017, and that was sort of it was very much linked up with the idea of traditional Star Trek, from the 60s. They would just go out in the desert, outside Hollywood and shoot their alien planets there, or they just build an alien planet in the studio, which is probably more likely the case. But it'd be something really basic and simple, and this red desert planet made sense. So this time around, we were sort of excited about what new worlds we could come up with. So that turned into like a snow planet and then a jungle planet. And then we had the exciting bit of going into the heart of infinity, which was this sort of Americana little street, where the character of Daly obviously grew up, and where his parents live and where they have a garage, and he can, so finding that place and then building that world up and making that sort of feel special and magical when you suddenly turn it into the center of the game, the center of the universe. That was certainly exciting challenges for us.
I think as well, because as a story point, you need to go bigger in terms of introducing more of this world, especially when
Mm,
you can kind of free float round
yeah.
compared to the real world, should we say? Because the real world, you can have that look of, I guess it's kind of like grey and futuristic, whilst when you're
Mm,
in space, you could have a little bit more va vibrant looking colors, especially as well, like on the
hmm
ship. With the production design, you can probably hide the blue lights in when it comes to sort of lighting the sets, and then also when you're having that sort of hyper look real of like Americana as well, because of even like the Americana way, that feels
mm,
very different to like real life. It's like it has that luscious
Oh, for
greens
sure.
and brightness, whilst the real world is just a
Oh,
bit
yeah.
dreary.
Absolutely. No, that was definitely the contrast we were looking for. Especially when we did the first one in 2017, we wanted to really feel the contrast that the real world was drab and boring, and we sort of came up with this sort of quite green, almost no color kind of look. And then when you come into the game world, suddenly there's a ton of color. And we sort of tried to do a similar approach this time again. But then I think because we had so many scenes in the office was, there was a long extended sequence in the beginning, maybe 10, 15 minutes where you're all in the office constantly. I think I did try the grade. I tried to take all the color out and look at that in that way. And I think both the director and Charlie, the producer, and writer, both felt that you were boring the viewers, that they were you were not enticing them in. You were sort of pushing them away with this look. So we sort of pulled back and left a bit more color in the office. But also, I mean, it was sort of a development on how the office looked originally and how it looked this time round. We did add a lot of more LEDs to the world this time. There's a big sort of infinity logo on the wall. There's big video screens with live graphics. ton more practicals everywhere. Beefing that up and giving it a little lift made sense. And also, Walton being that flamboyant, crazy, money grabbing character, him showing off, made sense that his office would be a bit more bling than maybe it was the first time round.
Yeah, and again, it's such a like having those sort of design elements as well is a great way like of storytelling because you've got the office where the walls basically been knocked down, so you can have that idea of like Walton being that sort of ego guy, and especially with when you capture the
Mm,
sort of images of him with the articles and the way that he's posing in that sort of
yeah,
uncool but edgy sort of way
yeah.
is brilliant visually as
No, we love
well.
that. No, we love that, and I love the moment when you cut from him sort of like that in the picture, and spin round, and then he's like that, and in his office desk pondering something. He's living his he's living his reality.
Yeah, this odd reality of like what is going on,
Mm,
especially with whatever they're doing in like the outside world, with sort of monetizing the game more and more and trying to build it up, slash having no
mhm.
idea what's actually going with his company.
Yeah.
But what I'm curious to know about as well, because this is something that got brought up when I was talking to Miranda, the production designer, and
Hmm.
it kind of got me thinking when I got to talk to you was that on the ship there's time I was asked about the sort of use of green screen, and she corrected me with
Hmm.
saying that they used LED screens instead
Oh yeah,
for the big sort of for like the ship scenes. And as a
yeah.
DOP, how do you go about using these LED screens and sort of
Hmm.
capturing the both what's happening there, as in capturing what's happening on the scene, but then also using them as a strength to help with your photography?
The great thing about but what it sort of helps everyone, when you have a video screen on set. The great thing about it is that you are displaying the actual image that's going to be there. You're displaying it live, so the camera can see it, but the actors can see it. So when we were filming in the spaceship, we were in space virtually. Because you could look out the window. There was a big star field, and you were in some kind of control area. So it all makes sense. It made people sort of live the reality from a more practical point of view. The great thing about having a video screen versus having a green screen is a green screen is obviously green, and it lights up green. It likes everybody green. So if you sit too close to a green screen, you get a green face. Also, every reflection that you see in there, and this set is full of glass and chrome and metal and all these different things that reflect. So when you put a big green screen out that window and you shoot towards it, suddenly everything around it is green. The panels and everybody has green spill. And from a vis effects point of view, that's going to cost a ton of money to fix and clean up. So having that video screen just actually was a huge cost saving, and it was also great for the interactivity of the actors, looking at what's going on the screen. It was also the screen had a great function. We could put anything on it. Obviously, we could put a star field, we could put hyperspace on it. When Nanette sort of wakes up in a hospital bed. We could actually play her POV shot. What you see in waking up in hospital bed. We did this handheld shot of what she would experience waking up, and we could play that on the video screen. So when the actors sat and had to sort of be shaken around at the end of the episode, they could actually see which way they were shaken, reacting to what was on screen. That was all very useful. But also we did sometimes go into green. So whenever we had any kind of effect sequence where spaceships turn up or laser bolts are going off, then of course we would then switch to green. But very cleverly, the screen would sort of cut out. We could sort of make little cutouts instead of turning the entire screen green. We would just turn it green around the areas that was sort of important to us, or which is sort of important to this effects. So usually that's any live character, especially one with hair. We would just make it green around them, and then the rest of it would still look like a star field. So you get the right reflections everywhere else apart from just around their faces.
Okay, cool. I just think there's a lot of like it's just amazing how much tech has changed over the past sort of 10
Oh,
years
for
or
sure.
so. And it's kind
Oh,
of
yeah, absolutely.
and it's crazy to think that like instead of just having a green screen, you'd have those screens and just how much more interaction actors would have. And I bet you it's kind of funny walking onto a set, being in a cockpit and being like, wow, this is incredible. And then seeing then looking out to like a window and actually seeing space and being like, whoa, like this is like I can't believe this is like was actually I can't believe I'm actually seeing this and this is actually
I know,
being
I know. We
projected.
couldn't believe it either, and neither could the cast. When the cast turned up, it was a great thrill. You can actually find the clip online if you look for it. There's a great moment. I think Netflix posted it, where you see the cast step on the bridge for the first time, and that is their genuine reaction. When they just saw, wow, we are in space and we're back. That was a truly exciting moment.
Yeah, and as a DOP as well, like some with this te sort of tech, how does that kind of help you in the future, or is it going to hinder you, or are you just embracing it because it's such a cool piece of tech?
I think every technology has a time and place. I think for this in this situation outside that viewport, it made a lot of sense. And I can see, being outside windows in flats or any kind of set that you built where you have to shoot night or day and things have to sort of move or you want to see clouds moving. It could be all sorts of things. The video screens are incredibly useful, but they're not end all other it's not what's it called,
Be
stop
or
stop
end all.
developing other solutions.
Yeah.
Exactly, it's actually, but it's really good at certain things, and in here it was a fantastic tool, but I would not use it for everything, but things are developing and coming up all the time. And I try to keep my finger on the pulse, and if there's something useful or something clever out there that you might be able to use in a production, I will try to, take advantage of it.
Okay. Yeah, and with with things like that, it's just incredible to see, and as a viewer as well, like you do think, oh, how did something like that get made? How did they manage to
Hmm.
actually pull off those looks, or even the sort of dogfights as well in space?
Hmm.
But what I'm curious to know about as well is like collaborations with other departments. Already spoken about
Sure.
VFX, but what I'm curious to know about as well is when it comes to like production design. I know I
Hmm.
mentioned already by like in the design itself they do put in lights, but when it comes to the outer planets and maybe
Hmm.
other parts of the ship or real world, what are the conversations that you have with other departments to one? They'll help you to sort of create the visual style, but at the same time, you want to show off their work as well.
Yeah, but everybody is in the same boat, We just want to make the best program possible, So everybody tries to link up in the best way we can, and if you are in a good production, nobody tries to work against each other. You're actually trying to improve and come up with something clever. I mean, we were in a situation this time around, sort of talking about the alien planets, where we sort of had all sorts of ideas of last in 2017 we went to Lanzarote, and that's where we shot our sort of volcano, the red planet kind of stuff. And we sort of figured we'd probably do that again. We would go to maybe Gran Canaria. We talked about Iceland. There was all these different places we can go, maybe for Snow Planet, and then as we got closer and closer, we basically just got told by Netflix that we were over budget already, with everything else going on. So there was no chance of us traveling anywhere outside the borders of the UK. So we had to sort of quickly reconfigure and work out what we could do instead. So we came up with a couple ideas for, we then said, okay, it could be a snow planet. We were looking at for that in maybe a slate quarry. We realized that again, that was going to be too expensive because it had to be a night shoot. We have to shoot for 2 nights. The amount of gear and electrical stuff that we had to put in there was, immense. So we decided to scrap that idea, and the snow planet then became a studio build. And we built these amazing rocks. Miranda, as you mentioned before, came up with this brilliant set with these zigzagging kind of rocks, which looked amazing. And we filled it with snow. And, so that was one planet done. Another planet, we thought of a jungle planet. Jungle planet would be fun. Again, we thought maybe Gran Canaria. But if we couldn't go to Gran Canaria, we could maybe go to Black Park instead. So Black Park, sort of outside of London, not too far, has there's a place in the Black Park where they have five sort of or three, four massive redwood trees. And we sort of felt that that gave us a little bit of a jungle feeling. So we basically just went there, used those big redwood trees, filled it up with extra greenery, all helped by our wonderful art department and the greens department. And they dressed it up, and then we put some smoke on it, and then we were very lucky with the weather. And we got this beautiful, beautiful sort of hot jungle look that fitted for that scene. And then, of course, there's Walton's planet. So Walton's planet was this desert weird. So you're supposed to be him on a deserted island, So again, sort of sandy kind of thing made sense for us. And our location manager, Jethro, he did some research and found this incredible quarry in Wales, North Wales, which was an disused copper quarry. And the great thing about this copper quarry was that the way that people had sort of cut through the dirt and then the way that the copper had seeped out, it gave these amazing sort of color structures to the wall. So you had like weird blue and red and yellow colors all sort of on the texture of the rock, which looked amazing. So it felt alien, even before we did anything with our cameras or post post effects or lighting, anything. So it felt like a no-brainer. We had to go there and shoot there. But it was an interesting journey, going from, we could do anything. We go to South America, whatever, to like just make it work in the UK, but then your brain sort of kicks in to overdrive, and you work the problem, and you sometimes come up with even better solutions than you would have done had you had the a budget of a large movie or something.
Again, amazing what happens when you kind of have to scale back and think about how to sort of deal with problems and be creative
Hmm.
about it rather than having a huge amount of money.
For sure.
I've been to Black Park, so it's really cool when you get, because I was wondering how you guys filmed a jungle scene, because I was thinking, where could this be? And then it should have clicked in my head that it was Black Park, which
Well, you have a
again,
wander around. It's like 5 minutes from the lake, so you can, just a little bit around the back. If you find the redwoods, then you're there.
yeah, so, and I've probably gone there numerous of times, and
Right.
probably hasn't clicked in my head, or I haven't been as observant to see those things. But now I know it's like got to make a trip back there and have a
Yeah.
look and scout it out.
Mhm. It's
And
also you need the brain of Toby Haynes, our wonderful director. He's the one who sees this kind of potential. Who sees three trees and thinks, well, this could be a jungle. Most other of us will go, I think we need a bit more than that. But he's very clever. Sort of picking little details and knowing how much or how little you need to create a world like that.
when you have someone who kind of is like they're detail orientated, but also are kind of, because as a director, you'd think about how big of a scope they'll need to tell their story and how much they'll need to
Hmm.
show. But here it kind of sounds slightly the opposite, that instead of worrying about adding more, it's like let's work with what we have. When
Hmm.
you're working with a director like that compared to maybe other directors, does that make your job easier, or is it harder knowing that you can't necessarily move the camera how you'd want in the scene?
No, I think it always helps. I think have working with someone who's visual, who understands what an image requires and how to achieve that, is an obvious benefit, especially for, a show like this where you are creating alien worlds or something fantastical. When that you need someone who has a special brain who can be very sort of specific and logical about something that's crazy. Toby has that skill in space. No, so I think for this project, it's almost essential. If you're too literal, you get stuck and you wouldn't be able to do any of it.
Again, it's just curious to know because it's just everybody has their different ways of working and
Mm.
you're kind of servicing the show, but at the same time, you want to have your own, you want to have your own sort of creative fingertips or prints on it as well. What I'm also curious to know about, and it's just the continuity aspect because as audience members, we'll see everything all sort of cut up, all presented for us to watch. But when you're shooting,
Mm.
especially when it's days are in a different location or on set, or you'll be on a stage but in a different area. How do you go about thinking about the continuity from one set to the other set when I mean, it'll be one scene to the other scene, but you'll be shooting
Hmm.
on different days.
Oh, sure. I mean, you break it down, it's always one shot at a time, and we do a fair amount of prep. So when you look at the script, you work out, well, this scene fits in this location, this scene fits in that location, and I have a sort of internal brain for sort of memory for that kind of stuff. Like this was a night scene, we're cutting in this moment, sort of cuts to this. And sort of I'm making these links in my head all the time. But then also we have a fantastic department called the script supervisor, which is sometimes one person, maybe it's a team of two or three people, and they are keeping track of all this kind of stuff. When it's day, when it's night, what kind of look you were going, and also my DIT, who sits next to me and deals with all the rushes, but he also deals. He also has the ability to do color grading on set, live color grading. So while you're shooting, you manipulate the colors a little bit, sort of a little bit cooler this way, or a little bit warmer for this set. And they're sort of across that. So when you're doing scenes in one set that then links up with another set, and they're supposed to be the same place but two different locations, they will be across that and make sure and show me references on the day and going, this is what we shot in this place, and this is what you're shooting in this place. Maybe you need to adjust this to make it fit together a bit better. So there's lots of people sort of keeping track of these things, but I still think I have a pretty good brain for it myself, having done this for quite a few years.
Okay. Again, really curious to know with how
Hmm.
each DOP sort of work their way around it and how what headaches or might cause or how sometimes it might just be quite easy of just like, yeah, I've got it all in my head, we know what we're gonna do and
Hmm.
this is how our day will look.
For sure.
But again, interesting to hear how people work.
Oh, for sure.
I've got two more questions.
Sure, go for it.
For my penultimate question,
Hmm.
because Black Mirror is a series and each episode, minus this one, is a standalone story.
Hmm.
What was the favorite scene of the series that you didn't shoot?
No, I didn't shoot. Oh, let me think. First of all, have I seen all the episodes? Yes, I have. No, I've seen most of them. I've seen most of them. I have to think through the that's Plaything. Plaything was cool. What were the other episodes? There was the thing is, because my favorite, favorite bit in the that I remember, it is from an episode I shot. It's just not the USS Callister. My favorite moment from this series is when in Bed Noir when the lady Verity picks up the almond milk and just drinks it, in front of Maria. I just think that's such a brilliant, bizarre, crazy, outrageous, funny, disturbing moment, and I just love shooting it, and I love the way they edited it and the way it's all been put together. That is my favorite moment. But I know I didn't answer your question because it's obviously something I did shoot. What was there was Plaything, and what was the other episodes? There was
It was
Plaything and
Common People.
Common
I
People. I
think
haven't seen Common People.
Eulogy is another
Eulogy,
one.
Eulogy was lovely. I mean, I loved in Eulogy. I just loved the moment when they went into the pictures. When you sort of you're watching the picture from one angle, and then you just move to the left, and that when you saw that process was great. I really loved the thing that people had their faces scratched out, and it was tracked in 3D across them and stuff. That looked amazing. That was a strong moment for sure.
A solid choice. I think, yeah, I think one of those eulogy sort of ones where reliving memories and
Mm.
It's like I wonder if you would, if as a person, if you would do it yourself, just because it probably drive you crazy or not thinking about certain things. And I guess that's
I think
sometimes what
that's the magic of
Black
Charlie
Mirror.
Brooker.
Yeah,
He's very good at coming up with those scenarios, where you can't help sort of thinking it through for yourself. Yeah, he always just thinks those a few steps ahead of everybody else. He's a very clever man,
yeah, and yes, it does give you a lot to think about and
for sure.
chew on. For my final question,
So
what was your favorite scene to shoot on USS Callister into
into
Infinity?
infinity, what was the favorite scene? I think the favorite moment we had was probably when we shot Walton as caveman. When we see him for the first time in that caveman look, and we were on that in that crazy, quarry in Wales, and Jimmy just being so game and wearing nothing but a the tiniest bit of modesty wear. We were just laughing at every setup. Everything he did was funny. The details with his little friend Rocky, and that was the best time, I think. And also, it happened to be some amazing, glorious days in Wales with sunny weather, and we were all stayed in this fantastic hotel and had a lovely time as a crew. So yeah, that's certainly a lovely memory for me.
Good. It was a solid choice scene, and I can imagine it being quite fun to shoot, especially with somebody like Jimmy's game for it, and kind of he does throw himself massively into that role of
Oh, for sure.
in the game, and it's just the sort of the two, just how different he is as a character between the two is, chef's kiss.
Yes, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Stefan, thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you, Robert. It was nice to talk to you.
It was great talking to you. USS Callister into Infinity streaming now on Netflix. Go out and watch Stefan's work. Yeah, thank you again.
No, thank you. Thank you.
You
Yeah,
take
check
care
it
and
out.
yeah, 100% check it out. But then don't spoil it. Watch the first episode so you can see more Stefan's work as well.
Oh,
So
for sure, for
you can
sure.
have you can have the starter and
Start at
then
the
the main
beginning.
course.
Definitely, definitely.
Thank you again. You take care and bye bye.
You too. Thank you. Bye bye bye.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.